I-maid stretched lazily on the plush king-sized bed in the master bedroom of their mansion, still dressed in her silk nightgown, scrolling through Instagram on her iPhone 16 Pro Max. Everything around her reeked of money, from the imported Persian rug beneath her feet to the gold-plated vanity mirror on the wall. Life was good. No life was perfect. She scrolled through Instagram, double-tapping on the posts of her fellow rich housewives admiring their vacation pictures, designer outfits, and expensive shopping hauls. Her mouth opened wide in surprise as she scrolled past an influencer flaunting a Hermes Birkin bag with a caption, "Another shopping spree in Paris, because why not? A queen deserves luxury." I-maid sighed dramatically. "It's been almost 2 months since my last trip. I am due for another shopping spree in Dubai." Just as she was about to DM her travel agent, a soft knock sounded at the door. "Madam, good morning," came the timid voice of her maid Felicia. I-maid, who was still absorbed in her phone, barely acknowledged her. "What is it?" "Your breakfast is ready, ma." I-maid yawned and stretched like a spoiled cat. "Okay, bring it here." Felicia came in with a silver tray filled with a steaming cup of I-maid's special tea, a buttered croissant, and freshly squeezed orange juice. I-maid sat up and took a sip of the tea, but immediately frowned. "What is this?" she snapped. Felicia froze. "Ma, this tea is not hot enough. Do you expect me to drink this nonsense?" Felicia trembled. I thought it was the right temperature, madama." I-maid pushed the tray aside. "Take this nonsense away and bring me another one. Make sure it is exactly 75 degrees. "Yes, madama." Felicia hurried away, not wanting to risk further insults. I-maid sighed dramatically and returned to her phone. "These workers in this house are getting useless by the day. Abu must hire new staff." Her rich husband Abu was a young businessman who had built an empire from real estate and oil ventures. He had married Abu out of love, hoping she would grow into a responsible woman, but instead she turned into a full-time liability, a lazy wife who did nothing but shop, eat, and post on social media. Abu had tried. He had tried to set her up in business to encourage her to do something meaningful, but she refused, claiming she wasn't born to suffer. That evening, Abu had just returned from work. As he stepped into their mansion, his eyes landed on the dozens of shopping bags scattered across the living room. He frowned. Not again. Abu was curled up on the couch, giggling at something on her phone. She didn't even look up when he entered. "Abu destem hurzidivs the shepel aldis for golf." "Welcome, darling." Abu slowly approached her, still looking at the insane amount of shopping bags. "Where is all this from?" She smiled. "Just some new arrivals. My stylist said I needed an upgrade." Abu shook his head. "Abu destem hurzidov helist, do you even know how much you have spent this week?" Abu shrugged. "What is the big deal? It's not like you can't afford it." "That is not the point." Abu spat out. "Abu destem hurzidov helist am boil waf." Abu rubbed his forehead. "Do you ever think about saving, investing, doing something meaningful with your time?" "Abu destem hurzidov loft quais a milo loft. Wetbest bind won the force cycle to nooch twive. 5 were trained to timerst in viga the loft wife. My new spatalik set and harn up shumola. Dalden dog was klikiv, which after a dip show. Timers damache. God forbid me sitting in a shop from morning to night like a common woman. Never." Abu looked at her unbelievably. "Abu destem, do you think money falls from the sky?" She stood up and placed her hands on her hips. "Abu, let's be realistic here. You are a billionaire. Why should I stress myself when I can just enjoy my life?" Abu sighed. "That is the problem. You don't want stress, but life can be unpredictable. You need to learn responsibility." "Okay, what if something happens to me?" Abu asked. Abu laughed coldly. "God forbid, my dear, something happened to you, you that is richer than Dangote?" Abu's eyes darkened. He had never felt this level of disappointment before. How can a woman have no ambition or sense of responsibility? And worst of all, she refused to change. For the first time since they got married, Abu regretted his decision. He swallowed hard and stepped back, shaking his head slowly. "All right." Abu frowned. "All right what?" He looked at her deep in the eyes. "I just pray you don't regret this." With that, he turned and walked away. Abu couldn't be bothered anyway. Abu was always talking about responsibility, but he still provided. She was living the dream and nothing was going to change that. Little did she know that her perfect life was about to shatter. The day started like any other for Abu. She had slept until noon, wrapped in her silk sheets while the house bustled around her. The scent of jollof rice and grilled chicken came from the kitchen, but she was in no rush to eat. Felicia, her maid, knocked timidly before stepping in. "Madam, your breakfast is ready." Abu stretched lazily. "Okay, just keep it in the dining room." Felicia hesitated. "Madama." Abu frowned. "What is it now?" Felicia fidgeted. "Madama, I just heard something on the radio about Abu, his car accident." I-maid's heart skipped. "What nonsense are you saying?" Felicia swallowed hard. Madam Abu was in an accident on his way back from Lagos. His car, the ringing of I-maid's phone cut her off. It was a strange number, I-maid answered. "Hello?" A deep male voice spoke. Good day, ma'am. This is from Lagos University Teaching Hospital. We regret to inform you that your husband, Mr. Abu, was involved in a fatal accident. His remains are currently in our morgue. The phone slipped from her hands. Her heart pounded violently. Her husband was gone? No, no, no. She let out a piercing scream. Soon the house was filled with mourners. Relatives, business associates, and friends all came to pay their respects. Emaid sat in a daze, rocking her 2-year-old son absent-mindedly. She hadn't eaten in 2 days. She couldn't sleep. She couldn't breathe. She just wanted Abu back. But he never would. Then on the 4th day, reality punched her in the face. Her phone rang. It was another strange number. Hello, ma'am. This is Lagos University Teaching Hospital. We want to remind you that you must settle the outstanding hospital and morgue bills before you can proceed with any funeral arrangements. Emaid's blood ran cold. Bills. Yes, ma'am. Your late husband's medical and morgue fees must be paid immediately. Emaid was speechless. How much is it? She had money in her account, but it was the money she had budgeted for her next online shopping spree. Is this how my life has changed? Without any option, she used part of it to clear off the hospital bills. Unfortunately, this was only the beginning. A week after Abu's death, Felicia and the rest of the household staff approached her. The nanny, the cook, the driver, and the gardener all stood before her looking nervous. Felicia spoke first. Madame, please, we need our salaries. Emaid blinked. Did my husband not pay you? Felicia looked at the others before replying. No, ma. Oga said he would pay us after he returned from Lagos. Emaid's stomach twisted. The reality hit her like a moving truck. This was the first time she was hearing about salaries. She had never been involved in such things. Tears burned behind her eyes. Please just be patient with me. I will sort it out. The staff nodded and agreed to wait. Emaid thought of what to do. She needed money to sort out all the bills, and the money in her account was running out fast. She decided to check Abu's safe for any money or his cards, but unfortunately she found none. He had traveled with all his cards. She then decided to go to the bank to access his funds. The next day, Emaid dressed elegantly, wearing a designer dress, diamond earrings, and high heels. She refused to look like she was suffering, at least not yet. She entered the bank and walked straight to the bank manager's office. The manager greeted her with sympathy. My condolences, Mrs. Abu. She nodded stiffly. Thank you. I came here because I need access to my husband's account. The manager hesitated. Madam, I'm afraid that wouldn't be possible. Her eyebrows furrowed. What do you mean? The manager sighed. Your husband took a loan from the bank, a very large one, so his funds are currently frozen until his debts are settled. Emaid felt like collapsing. A loan? Yes, he was indebted to the bank. Emaid shook her head violently. No, my husband was rich. He never told me about any loan. The manager looked at her with pity. Madam, I'm very sorry. She stood up abruptly. This was not happening. What was she supposed to do now? She had always thought Abu had everything covered, so she never asked questions. But now she was lost. Tears burned her eyes as she took out her phone and dialed her mother. The moment she heard her mother's voice, she broke down. Mama, Abu is gone and I don't know what to do. He took a loan from the bank and now we don't have anything. Mama, we are broke. Her mother was silent for a long time. Then, in a low voice, she said, These men are unpredictable. When your father died, he left me too with nothing. If I hadn't been working at the time, we would have starved. Emaid froze. For the first time in her life, she realized that she was completely alone. Days later, another bank sent some representatives to Emaid. One of them handed her an envelope. Madam, as per the agreement your husband signed, this property was used as collateral for the unpaid loan. The repayment is overdue and the bank is reclaiming ownership. Emaid stared at him blankly. The words sounded like jargon. Collateral, she repeated dumbly. The man nodded and flipped through the documents. Your late husband used this mansion as security for the loan he took. Unfortunately, since there has been no repayment, we are left with no choice but to take possession of the property. You and your household must vacate this premises within 24 hours. Emaid looked around her. The mansion, the place she had spent years lounging, hosting parties, shopping online and doing nothing meaningful, was no longer hers. She held her chest, gasping as she stumbled backward. Before Felicia could rush to hold her, she had fainted. Moments later, Emaid woke up on the living room couch. The room was filled with her domestic staff who were looking at her with concern and uncertainty. Felicia knelt beside her. Madam, are you okay? Emaid tried to sit up, but her head was still pounding. What happened? Madam, the bankers left after you fainted, but they meant what they said. We have until tomorrow morning to vacate. The words hit Emaid hard again. Tomorrow morning she was about to become homeless. The same staff who had catered to her every whim now looked pitifully at her as if she were a stranger begging for survival. She buried her face in her hands. What am I going to do? There was a long silence before her driver Musa cleared his throat. Madam, the truth be say, we no fit stay here again. The house go soon belong to another person. One by one, the workers nodded silently. and began gathering their belongings. Felicia too joined in. "Madam, I want to stay, but I have a younger brother to take care of. I need to find another job quickly." Maid looked at them confused. She wanted to beg them to stay. She wanted to tell them that she would find a way to pay them to keep them employed. But she had no money and no house. So one by one they packed their bags and left. By night the once lively mansion was empty. Only Maid and her son remained. Her phone was silent. There were no calls or messages. The so-called friends who used to party with her and join her on extravagant shopping trips had all disappeared. She reached out to a few of them earlier that evening hoping for help, but they all had the same excuses. Not a single one offered help. Maid let out a bitter laugh. So this was what life was like when you had nothing. She closed her eyes and thought of the one place she could go to. The next morning, Maid gathered her valuables, her jewelry, designer clothes, and the little cash she had left. She hailed a taxi and instructed the driver to take her and her son to her mother's house in the outskirts of Abuja. When she arrived at the small bungalow, she hesitated before knocking. Her mother opened the door and froze in shock when she saw her. "Maid?" At that moment, all the strength Maid had left crumbled. She collapsed onto her knees, crying uncontrollably. Her mother knelt beside her and wrapped her arms around her daughter. "Shoo, my child. I know. But Maid couldn't stop crying. She had fallen from grace. She was no longer the wealthy, pampered housewife of Abuja. She was now just another struggling widow with a toddler to feed. The next morning, Maid was woken up by a loud bang on the door. She blinked at the unfamiliar ceiling. Then the reality hit her again. She wasn't in her mansion anymore. She was in her mother's small bungalow. She sat up slowly, feeling stiff from sleeping on the simple mattress. She came out and saw her mother standing, holding out a broom and a mop to her. Maid frowned. "What is that for?" Her mother looked at her sternly. "Maid, this is not your Abuja mansion. You will clean this house, bathe your child, and find something to do with your life." Maid put on a pitiful face. "Mother, you expect me to clean? I just lost my husband. I don't think I can." "And what do you think I lost when your father died? You think life will pause for you because you lost a husband? My dear, the earlier you wake up, the better. Go and sweep the house now." Maid had no choice but to swallow her pride and do as she was told. It took Maid twice as long to finish the sweeping. She was exhausted and wanted nothing more than to collapse, but her mother wasn't done with her. "Go and bathe your son," she instructed, pointing towards the small bathroom. Maid stared at her helplessly. "Felicia used to do that." Her mother looked irritated. "Well, Felicia is not here. Go and bathe your own child." Without arguing further, Maid lifted her son and carried him into the bathroom. "If I don't adjust, who will take care of him?" She had no choice now. She had to learn. Later that evening, Maid sat with her mother at the dining table, eating a simple meal of iba and okra soup. She barely had an appetite. For the first time in years, she was forced to eat basic food. No fancy steak, no exotic pasta, no imported champagne. She pushed her plate away and sighed. "Mother, I don't know what to do." Her mother looked at her seriously. "Then figure it out." "But I have no money." Her mother smiled. "But you have expensive clothes, jewelry, handbags, things that cost more than some people's life savings." Maid stared at her mother in horror. "Mother, are you telling me to sell my things?" Her mother shrugged. "No, maybe you can just sit there and starve." Maid's throat burned. She turned and looked at her son, who was sleeping peacefully on the couch, and she realized she had no choice. She had to provide for him. The next morning, she called a reseller, arranged a meeting, and sold over 80% of her designer clothes, bags, and jewelry. The money she raised was nowhere near the wealth she once had, but it was enough to start up something. Now she needed a plan. Maid researched businesses she could start with the little money she had. After much thought, she settled on selling groceries and raw foodstuff in a small rented shop. Her mother helped her find a decent shop in the market area, and within a week she had stocked up on bags of rice, beans, yams, vegetables, and cooking ingredients. On her first day, she sat behind the counter fidgeting nervously. She was so used to being served that the idea of being the one serving customers felt foreign and humiliating. A woman walked in and asked for a cup of gari. Maid nodded, then slowly scooped the gari into a measuring cup. This was her first sale, but it was not going to be her last. Slowly business picked up and Maid became more comfortable at it. 2 months later, Maid had completely transformed. She now woke up early, went to the market to restock goods, handled customers well, and managed her little business with wisdom. She had learned to budget, to save, and to be accountable. She had even saved up enough money for Abu's final burial ceremony. With the help of her mother, she made the arrangements, and the date was fixed. On the day the cemetery was filled with people, her former house staff, friends, and family had gathered for the somber event. But then something unexpected happened. As they waited for the coffin to be opened, a loud scream erupted from the back of the crowd. Aimee turned sharply and her breath seized. It was Abu. He was walking towards them alive and without any blemish. Aimee fainted. "Water! Bring water!" someone shouted. Aimee jerked up and blinked rapidly, trying to understand her surroundings. When her eyes finally focused, she saw him again. He was standing right before her. She screamed and wanted to run, but Abu held her back. "Aimee, calm down. Stay away from me. You are dead. We saw the accident. Your body was destroyed." The crowd murmured in confusion. Some of the former housemaids and staff exchanged terrified glances. "Is this a ghost?" someone whispered. Abu looked at her deeply. "Aimee, I'm not dead." Aimee's eyes widened in disbelief. This was not possible. It couldn't be possible. Her husband had died. The hospital had confirmed it. The bank had repossessed everything. She had been thrown out of her house and forced to struggle for survival. She had cried, suffered, fought for her life and changed into a completely different person. And now, he was alive? No, it had to be a dream. Abu exhaled deeply. "Let's go somewhere private. I will explain everything." "No." Aimee backed away. "Explain everything right here in front of everyone. Because if I have suffered publicly, you will have to explain publicly." Abu hesitated and then he told the truth. I faked my death." Aimee blinked. "You what?" "I had no other choice," Abu continued. "I had to teach you a lesson. For years I tried to make you reason, to make you responsible, to prepare you for life, but you never listened." Aimee's chest tightened. "Wait, what are you talking about?" Abu shook his head. "Aimee, I begged you. I offered to set you up with a business. I gave you opportunities, but you refused to work. You spent millions on shopping but saved nothing. You treated life like it would always be smooth. But life is unpredictable. Aimee and I needed you to understand that before it was too late." Aimee's legs trembled. "Oh wow, so you just disappeared. Do you have any idea what I went through? Do you have any idea how I suffered?" Abu nodded slowly. "I know exactly what you went through because I watched you." Her breath paused. "You what?" Abu took a deep breath. "I never really left Aimee. I stayed in the background. I had people keeping an eye on you." Aimee couldn't believe her ears. "Abu, you let me suffer. You let your son suffer. You let me hit rock bottom and believe I had lost everything?" Abu looked at her painfully. "Because you needed to understand. If I had told you it was a test, you would have ignored the lesson." Aimee's whole body trembled. She wanted to scream, to hit him, to demand why he put her through hell. But then she paused, because deep down she knew he was right. She needed the change. She needed to grow from being the entitled, lazy wife who believed in easy wealth. She needed to learn to hustle, to value money, to work hard, and to appreciate survival. Her anger and humiliation clashed with a painful realization. Abu held her hands. "Aimee, I didn't do this to hurt you. I did it to make you stronger. And now look at you. You survived, you fought, and you came out better." Her heart softened because even she was proud of herself. She had thought she was weak and that she couldn't survive without luxury and comfort. But she had. She had survived and had become a woman of strength. Tears slipped down her cheeks. Abu wiped them away softly. "I'm back now, Aimee, and I want us to rebuild together." Aimee cried. "Abu, I don't know if I can ever forgive you for this." Abu nodded. "Take your time, but just know that I never stopped loving you." Aimee looked at him and smiled sadly. "Neither did I." The crowd erupted into cheers, and her mother, who was carrying her son, smiled proudly. A month later, after settling back in, Abu opened a massive shopping mall for Aimee, one of the biggest in the city. And this time around, she didn't waste the money. She hired good staff, managed accounts, and kept records. She had learned the value of money, and that luxury was meaningless without responsibility. She was now a businesswoman, a wife who contributed and not just spent.